help load the wagon," she said. "I decided to close early." That wasn't like her either, but I didn't comment for fear she'd change her mind. "The sales have been low for everyone. Not many tourists out today," she explained. "We've sold out of the pumpkins and asters, but that's all." Even I could have predicted the decrease in traffic. I hurried on down the steps. "Bee!" my sister called out. I turned toward her. "Denki," she said. Mom nodded in agreement. I waved my hand as if it were nothing, which they both knew wasn't true. I hated crowds, and being around strangers. "It's good to see her taking steps to stretch herself," Mom said as I continued on. I knew she didn't intend for me to catch her words. She'd been talking louder than usual lately, perhaps because her hearing had deteriorated during her illness. But it pained me to know my sister and mother talked that way behind my back. Since Dot had died, it was as if Molly had stepped into the role of parent, something I was sure she relished. Molly most likely had a touch of the flu that had been going around our district. Even so, we'd been through enough tragedy that I couldn't help but worry about her. Dot had died 2 years ago, and then Mom had a brain tumor. Benign, thankfully, but still she'd gone through an operation and radiation. I hesitated for a moment on the other side of the oak tree. In the pasture below, the vendors packed their wares: baked goods, fall gourds, lap quilts, woven baskets, fresh herbs, fall flowers, hope chests, and kraut and sausages. An entire cornucopia of offerings. I had often observed the market while I did the wash on Saturday mornings, taking in the sights, sounds, and smells, thankful I didn't have to interact with the people. I inhaled and kept marching. Our yellow lab, named Love, escorted me to the trail and then stopped and looked up at me with her dark brown eyes. I gave her a pat, even though I wasn't much of a dog person, but I didn't bother to tell her to stay. She knew not to follow me. Not nearly as sure-footed as Molly, I confronted the steep slope, doing my best to keep my balance. I didn't possess the level of comfort my sister had with every inch of our land. Although I couldn't say I excelled at it, I spent much more time doing housework than I did outside chores, leaving the flower farming to Molly. But still, I loved our home, land and all, and couldn't imagine ever living anywhere else. Although I wouldn't mind if Molly and her husband, Leon, moved away. Close enough to do the work, but not in the same house as Mom and me. I was ready for a break from my sister. It wasn't that I didn't love her. I did, with all my heart. But with Molly, her way was the only way. We were sisters, true, but as different as night and day, starting with my dark hair and brown eyes. Mom said when I was born she'd expected I'd be just like Molly, but she said it was obvious from day one I wouldn't be the go-getter my sister was. All my life, I'd lived in Molly's shadow. I stumbled over a rock as I reached the pasture, my arms flailing as I regained my balance. I swiped at a trickle of sweat by my temple. It had been overcast and drizzly for several days, but the weather had turned warm again. Maybe we would have a streak of Indian summer before winter came. The savory smell of bratwurst made my mouth water as I approached the market. A few English customers bought up the grilled items and pastries, reaping a good sale price. I kept my head down, hoping none of the vendors expected a conversation from me. My strategy worked. No one even called out a hello, although a stranger, an Amish man I didn't recognize, turned toward me and stared as I passed him. He was tall, broad, and handsome, and wore a thick, short beard. I could feel his eyes still on me as I hurried along. When I reached our flower booth, my brother-in-law, Leon, nodded a greeting. He and I were both introverts, and had much more in common with each other than either of us had with Molly, proving that opposites attract, since she was the one he chose. For a short time, a few hours on a camping trip a year ago last June, I wondered what it would be like to court him. But now he was